Alright, so I've been testing quite a lot of different arena teams and I've settled on this one being probably my favorite one for this particular patch. It's this triple Orserk running Lightning Bolt, Beam Slicer, Meteorain with Serenity, Musclehead, Demon God and Legend. So it's just 3 identical Orserks, not really mixing anything up. And then for the inventory, we got double rocket launcher, 1 grenade launcher and 1 Terraprisma. And the rarity of these doesn't really matter, you could use the common versions or anything like that. It's mainly about what they do, like stunning the tamer and stuff like that, but we're gonna show that instead of talking about it. Running a dragon support whistle and an electric support whistle, and then the attack and defense whistles, and then the rest of the stuff isn't really that important. So let's just jump straight into the fights and see what's really going on here. Okay, so what I really like to do at the start of these fights is, it depends a little bit on if it's a normal tamer or a fat tamer, like the Metal Merchant or the Black Marketeer. But I shoot that rocket launcher a bit to the right of the tamer, and you sort of bounce all the pals into this big cluster. They're being hit by a lot of lightning bolts, being hit by multiple beam slicers, and then I'm just kind of focusing on the tamer, mainly to prevent him from shooting my pals, because it tends to stagger them and then they won't use their attack. And in the case right there, some of them do a huge amount of damage with their different weapons. Like the Jonin here, for example, is one that people have been struggling with a little bit. So the Terraprisma, it just sends out the swords immediately at the tamer, causing them to roll, as long as it isn't the Black Marketeer or the Metal Merchant. And that little roll buys you a couple of seconds where they won't be attacking your pals, lets your pals do their 3 main attacks, which ends up being very helpful. You can see another Jonin fight here, because the Jonin is one that people have been struggling with quite a bit, because the sword does a lot of damage. So just trying to switch to the grenade launcher instead seemed to be a little bit worse, because he's still gonna run forward. So using the rocket launcher, sending him up in the air buys you a couple of seconds, because what ends up happening with the Jonin that slows this fight down a little bit is that he runs up close to your pals and they tend to focus him instead. So if you notice your pals are focusing the tamer, sometimes it's best to just let them focus the tamer, because in the case of the Jonin it is pretty weak. But it tends to just die on this second wave of attack. So the main goal is to get the pals to die in the first wave of attacks and not have to wait for cooldowns at all. By doing this little bounce thing where all the pals will get hit multiple times. Some pals, like water and fire pals, don't burn as well. Getting burn damage from Meteorain and Beam Slicer does help a lot as well, to make the fights a little bit faster. Here's the first one that won't do the roll effect when the Terraprisma sends out. So you're gonna see here, Terraprisma goes, but he just keeps on shooting to the right of him, just bouncing him in behind his pals. Seems to work pretty well, because then he'll be sort of trying to get an angle, or might be shooting his own pals in the back. Not doing damage, but just not hitting your pals. The railguns or the miniguns here, they are pretty annoying with the stagger effect to your pals. If you just let him shoot from the beginning, your pal will get staggered through all 3 first attacks and not use them at all. And I think this is probably the worst fight for this party, because it's just a bunch of ground and water pals. So they're not burning and they're taking resistant damage from the lightning bolt and stuff like that. Master Pal Tamer a little bit in the same boat here, depending on what pal it decides to use. Stuff like Shadowbeak just gets absolutely shredded. Asher Robe also getting shredded by the lightning bolt. And then Asher main, like, while it does resist the lightning bolt, it seems to be pretty weak on its own. We can see another fight here when it uses the Anubis instead, also resisting a little bit, and Anubis tends to do this sort of dodge thing against the lightning bolt, which can be a little bit annoying. And then the fight just becomes a little bit longer, but still pretty fast fight there. Anubis dying very quickly. So if you do get them all clumped up for that triple beam slicer, it tends to hurt quite a bit. And then Meteorain, just super good skill in the arena. Orserk, 100% chance to inherit it, so if you're trying to breed the Orserk there, it's just a very good pal for this sort of easy budget breeding. This is probably the worst case scenario against Dr. Braun with the double dragons, but still the Xenoguard seem to be so big that the beam slicers do enough damage. And resistant damage isn't that bad, it's only a 33% damage loss. It's not like other games where weak damage does 50% damage, it does deal like 67%. So it's not terrible. Friendly Pal Tamer, another one that can be a little bit of a struggle for them. I think Walaska has this sort of floating hitbox thing where, like, Beam Slicer can struggle against it, Meteorain can struggle against it, Sometimes the friendly Pal Tamer also uses this Sylvagus Pal with a shield, which tends to, like it makes the shield, runs up in melee range and starts tanking all the attacks, taking 1 damage, which can slow the fight down quite a bit as well. So it's sort of a combination. If you get the Walaska and the Sylvagus in the same fight, it's gonna be a little bit longer. But when I've been using this party, the Pals never survive all of the attacks. You can see here, you could switch in a couple of Bastigors just for this particular fight instead. But really just using the Orserks seemed fine. The Bastigors tend to sort of explode with the Glacial Impact, sending Pals away from each other. And then you have to sort of recluster them. So even if it does like the super effective ice damage to the Sylvagus and stuff, overall I felt like the Orserk army performed, or Orserk party, did a little bit better than the like Glacial Impact, sending them away. So it's really just about clustering. So that was an example just to show how strong the clustering effect is with this rocket launcher, grenade launcher, sort of clumping things together. Then we have a couple of Black Marketeer fights. So you can see this is supposed to be the most difficult fight in the arena. It's a 100 IV pals, 4 stars, like perfect pals all the way through. But just doesn't really matter against this sort of clumping up Beam Slicer combo. So 2 Blastomuts as well, non-burning, but they die pretty easily to this Lightning Bolt. Also the stun effect from Lightning Bolt, like as long as they are stunned, they're not stunning your pal. So this build is really just about clumping them up and preventing that stagger effect. You really don't want your pals to get staggered. That's like the whole thing. So just shooting the Black Marketeer quickly there, stacking them all up on a nice little line. 3 Lightning Bolts hitting all 3 of them. Then sometimes the Beam Slicer hitting multiple targets, depends a little bit on what you're facing as well. Some of them like to run closer to use their attack. This is also the worst case scenario Black Marketeer. No Shadow Beak, just the 2 Blastomuts that don't burn. Bastigor resisting, Beam Slicer and Meteorain. But still you just do this sort of clump up effect, get the triple Lightning Bolt, and it sort of works out anyway. So generally, most fights the pals will die in that first wave of 3 attacks. And if they don't die in the first wave of 3 attacks, you can just wait for the second wave of Meteorain and that will finish them off. So the fights are always between 10 and 30 seconds. They won't go any longer, unless it's that Sylvagus that just tends to tank like all 9 attacks from your pals sometimes. So that's it for this party showcase in the arena. Thanks for watching.